Purdue fans. This is Johnny DeCamp bringing you play-by-play the rousing...
Hi, everybody, along with Ron Kramer, this is Pete Van Weeren welcoming you to Ross-Ade Stadium.
Live from Ross-Ade Stadium in West Lafayette, Indiana.
It's a football Saturday in West Lafayette, Indiana, and one of the biggest home games in decades.
Boilermakers rush the field. What a night in West Lafayette.
Your Central Indiana Ford dealers are a proud sponsor of Purdue football and the Ross-Ade's Greatest Games podcast. Visit your local Central Indiana Ford dealer today.
Welcome to the Ross-Ade's Greatest Games podcast. I'm Corey Palm with Tim Newton as we celebrate the home of the Boilermakers during its 100th season. A few notes on the series, as always, before we get started. These games will be presented chronologically. We are not going to try and rank order them. That's not a task anybody really wants. We like to save ourselves headache, and that's one way we can do it. Another thing is this is not a comprehensive list. We can't possibly touch on all the great moments that have happened in Ross-Ade over the last century, but we're going to do the best that we can and bringing you some really fun memories, some fun conversations, and later today we're going to have a great conversation with the Hall of Famer, Mark Herrmann. Tim, we're talking this week about the 1979 game with Notre Dame.
I was there. I believe I was in the stands that day. And coming into the game, Purdue had come off a really good 1978 season, was ranked in the top 10, in fact, ranked in the fifth spot going into the season, had a win in opening week, and then went to UCLA. And lost the game in the Coliseum. Mark Herrmann was knocked out of the game after a late hit by Kenny Easley. And so Purdue falls from 5 to 17, and all of a sudden you've got a rebound because here come the Fighting Irish to Ross-Ade Stadium.
And he's not exaggerating, folks. In researching this project, I went back and watched the film from that game. It was an extremely late hit by Kenny Easley that knocked him.
Sometimes the 15 yards are calculated and worth it, and in that case for UCLA it was because it knocked Mark out of the game, and of course that really hurt the Boilermakers' chances to pull off a win.
It did for sure. It was a tough game to begin with, but yeah, you lose a preseason All-American, forget about it. Meanwhile, Notre Dame came into the season. They had recently lost a future Hall of Fame quarterback from their roster, but still very good, as Dan Devine's teams always were. And they opened the year with an upset at number 6 Michigan. Mm-hmm. Big win in Ann Arbor, sort of got the nation's attention. When Purdue fell from 5th, Notre Dame took that spot and brought it into Ross-Ade Stadium, as you said. More than 70,000 people turned out, including yourself, in standing room only fashion that I'm certain would probably not be allowed today.
No, in fact, there were a lot of things back in that 78, 79 era. They actually brought in extra bleachers that went on the sidelines, if you can imagine that. So imagine Ross-Ade. Now, at that point, I think we still had the fence around the field, which had since been taken away. But past where the players were on the 30-yard line on each side, you had bleachers on the field on the sidelines from the 30-yard line down to the goal line. You had extra bleachers that were brought in, I think, in the north end zone. Basically, any spot that you could fill people with, they filled people with.
And I believe it was a record for the state of Indiana at the time. Most people to watch a football game in the state of Indiana, of course, that record would last only a couple years.
Yeah.
But let's get to the game itself. It started off with the Irish taking the lead after a Purdue fumble. Yeah. Wally Jones mishandled an exchange with Herrmann, and the Irish pounced on it. Still took some trickery to get in the end zone.
Yeah, it was a little irritating because here comes this big, bad Notre Dame team, and you think they're going to run the ball at you, and they wind up scoring their first touchdown off a fake field goal.
Fake field goal gets them on the board. Herrmann draws even late in the first quarter with a touchdown pass to Dave Young. I really feel like if you're a Purdue fan and you don't know the name Dave Young, you haven't done your homework. One of the true great Boilermakers.
And really a guy that was ahead of his time. We think now of you look at the Travis Kelce's, the guys that are great pass catchers and can get it free in the open field. Dave Young was way ahead of his time. It turned out did not have a great NFL career, but he was a high draft pick from the New York Giants. But he was able to stretch the field. He could catch the ball over the middle, and he was an athletic freak. I mean, Dave Young was as good a tight end as we've had here.
Absolutely, which is saying something because there have been some great tight ends come through here. And part of that is, as Mark will talk about later, Dave Dave was aided in the innovative offense of head coach Jim Young.
Jim Young was ahead of his time. We've had three innovators here at Purdue. We had Jim Young, you had Joe Tiller, you had Jeff Brom, and Jim Young really, in a time when it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust in the Big Ten, Jim Young brought passing back to the conference.
Absolutely, and a ton of fun to watch those films. What wasn't fun for Purdue fans was after Young tied it up with that touchdown late in the first, Notre Dame put the next 13 points on the board, and midway through the third, they led 20-7.
Yeah, and I remember you sit in the stands, and your team, which was ranked number 5 coming into the season, has lost a game already, and now you're trailing Notre Dame on your field 20-7 in the third quarter. You're thinking, where is this season going? But all of a sudden, the defense played pretty well all day. The junk defense that Leon Burnett put together. And finally, Mark got the offense cranked up in the final quarter and a half.
Mark got the offense, absolutely. A couple third down conversions to Bart Burrell on what would be the first touchdown drive for Purdue in the second half. Wally Jones took it over the finish line there to make it 20-14. Then Marcus McKinney came up with maybe the play of the day with an interception that he returned deep into Notre Dame territory.
Yeah, that was a great Purdue secondary. Bill Kay, Marcus McKinney, a bunch of guys back there. Tim Seneff. I mean, it was it was the back half of that junk defense. You had great pressure up front, but those guys in the back were pretty good too, and created a lot of turnovers and had the huge turnover in that game.
Short field, the Boilermakers took just 3 plays to take the lead. Again, it was Jones crashing over the goal line, 21-20, and another punt, another sustained drive. Herrmann led the Boilermakers on a 10-play drive that covered the length of the field, ate up almost half the fourth quarter before the Carmel connection connected once more.
Mark Herrmann to Bart Burrell.
Puts the Boilermakers up 28-20.
Yep.
And kind of averted disaster late. About 3 minutes left in the game, a little over 3 minutes left in the game. Purdue fourth down, and they need to punt out of their own, they were about the 20-yard line.
Yeah. The snap, let's just say, was airmailed.
It was.
And Joe Linville was the punter, and luckily Joe was able to fall on the ball back in the end zone. So instead of Notre Dame recovering it and maybe tying the game with a 2-point conversion, Purdue took the safety, so you're still up 28-22. And then they were able to hang on from there.
They did. Not a great day for Herrmann statistically, although anytime you beat Notre Dame, it's a great day as a Purdue quarterback.
He got 1, and that was the win.
That was it. 158 yards, 2 scores. Impressively, we've talked a lot about the defense. From that moment that Notre Dame scored to go up 20-7, from that moment on, they gave up 1 first down.
Yeah, it was a great defense. We talked about the innovative offense that Purdue had with the shotgun snaps. We'll talk with the Mark about that, a little bit different than what you see today. But the defense was something, again, that the Big Ten hadn't seen. They called it the junk defense because you never quite knew where everybody was going to line up. And not only that, but you had guys like Keena Turner in there and Ken Lauschen in the middle and Marcus Jackson. I mean, it was an incredibly talented defensive side of the ball.
For sure. 92 yards rushing on the day for Notre Dame, less than 300 yards of offense total for the Irish, and they ended up sliding into a 7-4 season. It wasn't in the end, it didn't end up being a vaunted Notre Dame team, but 7-4 is a season that a lot of teams around the country would take most of the time. So, when your bad is still better than most people's goods, it's your good program. Notre Dame's one of the best, and anytime the Boilermakers take that shillelagh home, it's a big deal.
Well, and meanwhile, Purdue went on to have a 10-win season. It's only one in program history. The only loss the rest of the way was at Minnesota, a game where everything went wrong. But the Boilermakers finished the season with a bucket win down in Bloomington, a game that, again, Mark Herrmann was knocked out of that game. And fans will remember that the Purdue the training staff put towels up around Mark as they were carting him off the field, because these were the days you didn't have a lot of bowl games back then, and so there was a lot of mystery of which bowl game Purdue was going to be selected in, and they didn't want people to know if Mark was badly injured, which thankfully he wasn't. But I just remember I was down in Bloomington. It was the first time I'd been at Indiana and sitting in the end zone with a bunch of students watching that game. It was one of the most fierce, hard-hitting games I've ever seen. But the Boilermakers rolled over the Hoosiers at the end and then go on to beat Tennessee in the Bluebonnet Bowl.
Great season, in large part because of great games like this victory over Notre Dame, Week 3, the 1979 season. One of the greatest games in Ross-Ade stadium history, and we'll talk with Mark right after this.
Your Central Indiana Ford dealers are a proud sponsor of Purdue football. Visit your local Central Indiana Ford dealer today.
Welcome back to the Ross-Ade's Greatest Games podcast. We are joined now by the great Mark Herrmann. Mark, thank you so much for finding some time for us to discuss the 79 Notre Dame game. I know you had a lot of memorable games in your career. I'm sure this one sticks out as much as any.
Yeah, no question. Whenever you play Notre Dame, it's a big game, and the 2 previous years we lost very close games. So we were very anxious to host them, and it was a tremendous crowd, as I remember, and we had just come off a loss out in L.A. to UCLA. So we were excited to play the Irish. Like I said, the fan support I think we had over 70,000, which was just crazy. So, so we were excited. We knew we had a good football team. We hadn't played well early in the year, so this was a chance. We were both nationally ranked, and a chance to get the Irish at home was pretty exciting.
You mentioned that you would come off a disappointing loss the week before to UCLA, and the team started in the top 5 in the season. A lot of expectations coming into 79. Disappointing loss, and you took a big hit in the UCLA game the week before from Kenny Easley.
Yeah, I did, Tim. It was a hot night at the Coliseum and smoggy, and so we played UCLA, and I remember we were going down to score in their territory, and I was running, and he just unloaded on me at least 5 yards out of bounds. Of course, they threw the flag, but I was goofy, and I finally had to succumb to Larry Gates as the game went on. So, yeah, very, very disappointing finish for that game, because we thought we had an excellent chance of beating them, but we just had too many mistakes, and unfortunately it came on the short end. So
then you had that was a night game at UCLA, late night flight, red-eye flight back to West Lafayette, which kind of makes a short week to get ready for a top 5 Notre Dame. Was there any question with the hit to the head? I know concussion protocol is probably a little bit different back then. Was there any question throughout the week if you'd play?
Well, no, not really. I had to shake the cobwebs out a little bit, but there were a few simple questions. If I could answer those, I was ready to go.
How many fingers? 3 chances.
Yeah, if you're within one, you're on. Yeah, so no, I was ready to go, and I was determined. I was coming out of high school. It was down between Purdue and Notre Dame. So there was always a little extra incentive for myself to play well against them. So, no, the preparation was great that week. We were excited, and we couldn't wait to get on the field to take care of business.
When you look back on that day, Mark, what do you remember the most about that win over Notre Dame?
Well, I know we got behind early. We had an early fumble. I think there was a little tough connection with Wally Jones, and they took advantage and actually jumped out to, I think, a 20-7 lead or something. So, we weren't playing bad football. There was just some things that they had a couple of a fake field goal and a flea flicker, and all of a sudden we're down a few touchdowns. But then we settled down. We started running we ran the football very well, as I can remember, and we didn't maybe threw it 20 times, but we were pretty efficient, and our defense really started taking over. We just had a great group on that side of the ball. But eventually we started getting things going our way. The momentum of the crowd, I think, was bringing us back, and we started making some plays and started stopping them. And I think we scored, 20 or so unanswered, maybe 21 to take the lead. So there were a lot of big plays along the way. I definitely remember Marcus McKinney's interception right on their sideline, and he took it back to inside the 10-yard line, and that really got us going in the third quarter, and then we just took that momentum and finished it off.
Yeah, Wally Jones, 25 carries, 85 yards, 2 scores. John Macon, 86 yards as well. Yeah. They both had great days out of the backfield, which, like you said, this was not one of your statistical great days. 70% completion is pretty good.
Yeah.
But, 160 yards or so, just a couple scores. To be able to rely on the run game had to be great.
Yeah, I think we were very efficient, very balanced, and Coach Young always wanted to be able to run the football, and we used a split back attack. We didn't use the typical I formation, so we got some sweeps outside and then some off tackle, and I think both those guys run so hard. And I credit the offensive line for coming off the football. we didn't need to throw it that much. We were efficient, and I think I hit Dave Young with the touchdown, and then ultimately finding Bart for the kind of the score that gave us a little room. So. Yeah, I think it was just one of those games where you just kept going with what was working, and at that point, the run game was pretty darn good.
I have to admit, Mark, I chuckle now when I look back at films from 78, 79, 80. The shotgun snaps.
Yeah.
You know, we see the shotgun snaps today, and they're all practically every play. Yeah. They were more like punt snaps back in the day.
No doubt. Yeah, because when we first put it in, Coach Young said, well, let's back you up. So as soon as you catch the ball, you're ready to throw. And yeah, I was a good 8 yards, about half what your punt snap is. And compared to nowadays, it's 4 or 5 yards. Yeah, I was 8 yards. And I'll give Pete Quinn credit. I mean, he was so accurate. He was just throwing darts back there. And I can remember just a few that were off target. So he did a great job. And that gave us a heck of an advantage. You know, I wasn't the quickest, most nimble guy back there, so it was great.
Pete wanted to make sure I brought that up.
Okay, I thought he may want to do it.
One thing about him, if you're going to give him credit or not, he's going to take credit. So, one way or the other.
Yeah, we all know.
Good to see you, Pete. Well. You mentioned that it came down to Notre Dame and Purdue. I imagine a lot of elite football players at the time, that was their choice in the state of Indiana. And yet a couple rough games, against them earlier in your career. You actually mentioned in your post-game comments that day how important it was for you to get a win against the Irish because all the Purdue greats, Greasy, Phipps, Samuels, they all had one, and you wanted one too.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big part of their legacy, and I certainly wanted to put that notch on the belt. So, and we had our freshman year, everything was going great until that one guy came.
Keep that Montana guy on the side.
That's right. Yeah. And then the next year up there, we lost 10-6, just a defensive battle. So yeah, we were all itching to have a great performance, and finally we got the offense going, and it just catapulted from there. But those are the kinds of wins that keeps the memories going, and because I was close to going there, and I wanted to, make sure that I could at least get one win out of that series. Yeah. So that was good.
A lot of people remember, and deservedly so, the Purdue offense in those days, but your defense was really, really good. What was it like going against that group every day in practice?
Well, yeah, like spring games or in spring practice was a battle because it was, full equipment and, all out. They had a heck of a system, Leon Burton with the junk defense, and there were some great players that went on and had wonderful NFL careers. You get look at Keena Turner, you look at Calvin Clark, Marcus Jackson, and then you had Kingsbury. Just a great group in the secondary. So yeah, it kind of made us better, and if we weren't moving the football or struggling, we knew our defense was a constant that was going to do a great job. So they were super throughout the whole year. And, it was our only 10-win season in Purdue history. And I think our defense gets a lot of the credit for that. So
a lot of great games that season. In football and sports, and a lot of sports, there's such a thing as a letdown. You guys had Oregon the next week, and they came in, and that could have been a letdown. The team didn't look great, but you gutted out a win in that one as well, and it's all part of what you said. It was a very special season.
Yeah, it would have been natural to come off that Notre Dame win and be flat the next week. Oregon was a tough Pac-8 team, I guess, back then. But they did the wildest thing. They would move their defensive ends out to double our wide receivers. They just wanted to snuff the passing game. So I've never seen that. So we had a great success running the ball that day. And I'm sure we'll never see that again. But they were going to take away our number one option. So that's, we had to go with that and just, kind of grinded our way to a win that week. So that, you're right. You never know the circumstances of games week in and week out. You just have to do what you can to pull out the W.
You mentioned it was the only 10-win season in Purdue history. The only other loss other than UCLA was up at Minnesota And that was a day that I know Pete Quinn talks about it with me all the time. You shake your head at that.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, I think we had 2 fumble punt returns inside the 5 or 10 or something. So we handed them a couple touchdowns, and I've never seen Coach Young so mad at halftime. He was up on a training table, and I think he knocked a lamp down or something. So he was so frustrated because, we just never could get it going up there, and that ended up keeping us out of the Big Ten championship and greater things. So. Yeah, that was the one real blemish on the year, that we just went up there and laid an egg. So, unfortunately, we couldn't have done something to overcome the Gophers because they were an average team that year. So,
Still, the 10 wins, bowl win, following the Blue Bonnet Bowl, correct?
Yes, correct.
Win over Tennessee, another great.
The last game of the 1970s.
Yeah.
The last game.
Yeah. It was, I think it was over by 11:30, so I barely squeaked in. So, that was a wild
That was
game.
a wild one.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. We got up to a big lead, and it should have been bigger because we fumbled again inside the Tennessee territory. But, but in, pure Boilermaker fashion, we had to keep it interesting in the end, and they made a heck of a comeback and took the lead. But we orchestrated a drive there at the end, and I finally found Dave Young for the winning score. So that was a very fun game, and people to this day said, "Oh, I was down in Houston that night, and such a fun game." So that capped off a very good season because nowadays we'd have been in a New Year's Day bowl, but there were only like 12 bowl games back then. So we thought we should have been like the Orange Bowl or Sugar Bowl or something, but the Blue Bonnet was the next up. So we played a very quality program in Tennessee, which was fun.
How would you describe Jim Young as a head coach?
Well, gosh, he was the reason I came to Purdue. Alex Agassi had just been fired, and I was kind of leaning more towards Notre Dame, and Coach Young flew in, drove down to Carmel, and sat down with me and kind of mapped out a plan for how he would use me if I end up being the guy. And he showed me some film of Arizona, some things they did in the passing game. And I knew his background being Big Ten oriented. And I thought, wow, I think I can respond to this guy. And I believe in him. And I think he's smart, he's tough, he's goal-minded. And I think he ultimately swung me back to Purdue, and I just felt like he would bring out the best in me, and he would design an offense if I was the guy, and ultimately I was. So he was able to develop things in the passing game, spreading it out, shotgun, moving our big tight end, Dave Young, across the formation. So all those things, and he was such a, he's so focused about his job and wanting to do well, and so if he would, I was talking to Corey. If he would have stayed around, I think he'd have been the greatest coach.
Well, and you look too. You had Jim Young, who really brought passing into the Big Ten, and then Joe Tiller, again revolutionized it, and then Jeff Brom does a whole different system.
Yeah.
So if you want to find out where offense is headed in the Big Ten, this is the place.
That's right.
This is the laboratory right here.
Exactly. Yeah, we had to be the trendsetter because we're not going to line up and pound a lot of these Big Ten teams. So we had to get outside the box a little bit, spread things out, do things a little, off kilter just to surprise teams and be able to take advantage of what you've got. And, if you've got a guy at the quarterback position that can orchestrate things and get the ball to the proper receivers, you can have some success at Purdue. And it's obvious that we've won. We've had good quarterbacks. Good things have happened. Yeah.
Definitely had some success. That innovative offense led to you in your career as the all-time leader in passing yards in the NCAA. What did that mean to you when that happened?
Well, it was incredible. As you're playing, you just don't think of the yardage and those things adding up, especially as a freshman. Oh my gosh, I was just playing on instinct and everything.
The interceptions record still stands too.
Well, it did until Timmy Chang took it over from Hawaii. a Friday night, we're flipping around, and they said, well, Timmy Chang just broke Mark Herrmann's interception record.
Yes.
Yeah, I never celebrated so hard. I still have it here at Purdue, but the NCAA thing is gone, so that's awesome. But no, it's a team thing, and I was very proud of that. I knew it wouldn't last long, and who knows where I am now, but it was fun to have that because it meant success for our program, and that was ultimately, we did what we needed to do to win football games, and I was able to do what I wanted to do and be a pocket passer and throw the football.
You were able to spend several years then in the National Football League after that, and right off the bat, you were involved in the trade with John Elway.
Yeah. Shock of all shockers. It's May after 2 years, 81 and 82. And by that third year, I thought, okay, I'm going to have a great chance here. Craig Morton was going to retire. It was just Steve DeBerg and me. And the draft had been over in April, but early May, and I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But Dan Reeves called and said, Mark, we've decided to trade you. We're going to bring in John Elway, and we're going to send you to Baltimore. Well, I was just shocked. I was just hoping to stay in Denver. The fans are great there and just have a career there. But hey, that's the NFL for you, and you got to adjust on the fly. So I had to kind of regroup and get the shock factor because I knew I was going to Baltimore to play for Frank Kush. That prospect is
got
scary.
to throw the ball around a lot.
Yeah, gosh. And I could picture him developing a Kush Mountain or whatever, Mount Kush in Baltimore somehow because he was making guys run. But anyway, so I just thought, okay, I'm going to make the best. This is what happens, and you got to go there with a good attitude to see what you can do.
Then you also had a great experience, you said, in San Diego, playing with Dan Fouts.
Yeah.
You told me it was and training camp, you got to do things a little differently than you did in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Eric Coryell, and we had just an array of great receivers, Kellen Winslow, Charlie Joyner, Wes Chandler, Eric Sievers, Pete Holohan, all these guys. We just line up and wing it, and being around Dan Fouts and learning from him. And, unfortunately for him, he was hurt a little bit, so I got to play a great deal in 85, and that was my best year in the league, and just had a lot of fun, and, was able to play 3, 4, 5 straight games. In the past, I'd have been, come in for one game or a half, and it's just really hard to find a rhythm. So I was in heaven out there, and Dan and I just got along great. And and Don Coryell, Ernie Zampese, our offensive coordinators, this system fit me like a total glove, and it was by far my most enjoyable year. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the end of your college career, the era on campus at the time. You guys had it rolling in the football program, but the basketball program was rolling too. Final Four in 1980, Joe Barry Carroll, literal big man on campus. What was it like in West Lafayette during that time?
As we look back, that was a golden era. I know the basketball team had come off, I think, an NIT win in '79
to the finals. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
IU at the
so anyway, yeah, and '79 we were, had 10 wins, and then 1980, Final Four. So yeah, it was a great time. It was just fun being around the basketball program because they were doing a great job, and Joe Barry was leading the way, and they just had a fun team, and they were just doing. And the Big Ten was extremely competitive. A lot of those guys were around in that era, so yeah, it was fun. We would come over to Mackey and score some tickets, and so yeah, we, unfortunately we didn't go to the Final Four. Who knew that would be the last time? But we were driving back from spring break, and we heard that we had beaten Duke in the Elite Eight, I think it was, and so yeah, that was a wonderful time, and we talked fondly about those 2 or 3 year periods.
I gave away my Final Four ticket. I thought, what? No big deal. We'll go back.
Oh,
we'll go back pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity, and hopefully,
I'm with you. Yeah, for sure.
Mark, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for going down memory lane with us.
Hey, it was a lot of fun. I always love to talk about those great days. So, and that was a fun game to talk about for sure. Thank you, guys.